We still have poverty, we have scarcity, we have a lack of innovation in many critical fields.
Most liberal ideas in the world have ultimately still led to a bureaucratic inertia. This is what we're trying to fix. The way we fix it is I was always very inspired by science fiction, building a spacefaring species. Underwater and cloud cities. Become cyborgs and all of that. Then I came here to Próspera for the first time. And it seemed like from a distant future. This is the coolest thing in the world.
Roatán is a very special island. It's part of Honduras, obviously, but it's a tourist island. So it has 100,000 people living here, but it has 1.2 million visitors per year.
Próspera is a physical place. It's actually in a gorgeous tropical paradise. There's all sorts of tech around, everyone's transacting in crypto. But what's actually more remarkable about it is what you don't see, and that is the legal innovation.
Providing good governance basically determines whether a country is rich or poor, whether the people will be hungry or whether they will have abundance. It's a clear and pure relationship. The better the governance, the wealthier the country.
We're not lacking in intelligence, we're lacking in the will to build and take risks. I think we can 10x the technological development around the world.
If we get the Próspera model to work, I think we'll see a massive boom, not only having poor countries become rich, but rich countries become vastly richer, and doing so in a clean way.
Come here, check it out. You need to see it for yourself. And you should do it soon. Just book a one-way ticket now. My name is Niklas. I'm originally from Germany. I went to study philosophy and economics, and I started my career in policy. I spent some time in think tanks in Washington, D.C. I was writing for academic journals, but I kind of realized the world of policy is not very dynamic and is changing things for the worse rather than for the better. So I shifted into the world of technology and entrepreneurship. I was always very inspired by science fiction, and I was working more for normal software startups as a startup operator because that's what I saw was realistic, because I'm also pragmatic. I want to do things that actually work and that help people. So I couldn't square my intellectual interests together with my practical skills until I came here to Próspera for the first time. So around the time I was a little nomad, I just met my wife and we put our lives in backpacks because of the COVID pandemic. She's American, I'm German. I was living in Berlin at the time, she in New York. And we just said we go for it and we start designing our own lives. And I started working on a couple of projects, but none of them were really what I was gravitating towards intellectually. Like I read a lot about, free market economics, and a lot was happening at the time during the COVID pandemic, especially in health, that I felt things weren't going in the right direction. So before I was always, hey, things are not perfect, but we're still making progress. But for the first time I felt, hey, we're actually getting worse on many of these things. I started looking into doing a startup in healthcare, kind of combining my analytics and data background and solving some of the world's biggest problems that have been exposed because of COVID. And I realized the part where that's broken, I can change as an entrepreneur. The parts that are broken are actually legal, right? So the way we build human institutions like the FDA, the CDC, and health authorities in general. And I didn't see a solution to that until I came to Próspera for the first time. And it seemed like from a distant future, like the idea of seasteading or of charter cities, building new governance models. For many people that are listening, that seems quite utopian or still like some cyberpunk idea. But then I came here and I saw what was already happening. So there were already buildings. They had this very sophisticated legal code that inspired me a lot based on traditions of common law, but looking into the future and testing out ideas that haven't been done before. And I saw startups here like Mini Circle example, the circular factory doing robots for construction and saw, okay, there's something special happening here. But hardly anyone knew about it around that time. So I started talking about Próspera. I started my own podcast. I started a VC fund that was bringing startups here and putting this in front of startups. Hey, you can really do things differently here and be much faster by using the Próspera legal system. It led me down to see a lot of different tier technologies that are out there and really deeply understand their challenges, especially the legal challenges. So those don't only exist in healthcare, but also when we build housing. We don't build enough, and that is because of regulations around building housing. Same with nuclear. Nuclear power could bring us much cleaner energy and much more abundance, but instead kind of our energy consumption, along with industrial growth and productivity, actually slowed down in the 1970s. Right, so there's this book, Where's My Flying Car, that really talks about how all these frontier technologies, how something happened in the 1970s, culturally and in politics and in regulatory, that have been systematically holding back much of technology development, at least in the world of atoms, where in the world of bits is the kind of progress and acceleration that we are familiar with and that we actually should see across the board and that we want more of. And that led me also to understand longevity as a technology, right? So the idea that aging is the root cause of other diseases, and aging is a process that you can potentially reduce the speed of or potentially even halt or reverse. And if we solve that challenge, that means we have more time to solve all the other challenges. Also, you need it realistically for the space travel part to preserve bodies for a much longer time for the amounts of travel time that generates. This is the most important problem to solve, and the best proof that the governance innovation that Próspera here has created can solve some of the world's biggest challenges. And that's when I started Infinita City, starting with a pop-up city and now being a launch pad for loads of startups in biotech, but also in crypto, and allowing these biotechs to go to market much faster than they otherwise could.
You know, the reason we're doing Próspera really is that we have all of these shortcomings in the world, right? We still have poverty, we have scarcity, we have a lack of innovation in many critical fields, energy, biotech, and more. If we can provide the best governance framework for countries all around the world, I think we'll see a massive boom in all of these key technologies that we haven't seen that much progress in. We've seen a lot of progress in the world of bits, but not a lot of progress in the world of atoms, mainly because they've been regulated, I think, in a non-optimal way. And so if we get the Próspera model to work, I think we'll see a massive boom, not only having poor countries become rich, but rich countries become vastly richer, and doing so in a clean way.
So Próspera is a physical place. It's not in the metaverse or something like that. You can go to the island of Roatán, part of the country of Honduras. The island has about the size of Hong Kong, and Próspera has close to 1,000 acres here of land, and there's several buildings on it, and there's several people in it. So first of all, it's a physical instantiation in a real place. And when you go there, it's actually in a gorgeous tropical paradise. Like, it's utopian. There's all sorts of tech around, everyone's transacting in crypto and all of that. But what's actually more remarkable about it is not what you see, like the physical place, is actually what you don't see. And that is the legal innovation. So Próspera was thinking very hard, why is it that the American Constitution, some of the most liberal ideas in the world, have ultimately still led to a bureaucratic inertia and to very strong and powerful governments that risk authoritarianism and that don't respect people's rights, and that leads to all that arguing and infighting. And they were thinking, how can we do something different? So they designed here a governance system still based on the liberal American ideas and values, plus the tradition of common law. It's a more bottom-up way of making law instead of a more centralized way of making law that we're used to by legislatures. And they're coupled with some new ideas. And the key idea is regulatory flexibility. So it's not that you as a business are regulated by what the legislators decide, but there is a market process for adopting regulation. You as a business have a choice what you're regulated under. And you can have the choice of regulations in different jurisdictions. And then you need to get an insurance company to accept it. So that, I think, is really an idea whose time has come, and that can radically improve governance, create business-friendly rules, stable property rights in ways that can really reverse the great stagnation and make us far more productive in the world of atoms as well as the world of bits.
We hope to, deploy our governance platform globally, right? So we work with and partner with many host countries and host governments to, basically provide this service for governments. And so what we're doing very simply is, we have a basic common law framework, that makes it very easy to do business. It's based on precedent, so it's very predictable. You don't get many surprises. And then we have a market-based way of doing regulation of advanced industries, right? So if you're doing biotech or crypto or fintech or construction or energy, you don't have the same type of regulatory process that you will have in other jurisdictions that is very typically slow, and you go by the centralized agencies that will say yay or nay. Instead, we have a market-based approach to regulation where we use insurance companies as regulators. And so if you want to commercialize your energy innovation or your biotech innovation, what you need to do is you need to get an insurance company to give you a policy, a liability policy, essentially, insurance policy. The insurance companies will only do that to the extent that you are legit, you have a good plan, you thought things out. Because if something goes wrong, someone can always sue you in an arbitration center, and the insurance companies would hate to pay up for that. So we have this different type of regulation, which is market-based regulation via private actors, right, insurance companies. And so that really helps us incubate much more advanced industries than other jurisdictions. We have reasonable taxation, right? We think that these services we should provide them in a high quality, but we shouldn't charge too much, right? In Sweden, they oftentimes charge you 55% of your income, and we don't think that's warranted, right?
The most important idea is switching from regulatory monopoly to regulatory competition. So the United States governance model, or especially when it comes to business regulation, is that you have agencies that are assigned by Congress to make rules for everyone, but there can only be one agency. Like, I can't say, hey, I have a different idea how to do clinical trials, or the rules that should govern crypto company and treasury vaults and things like that, right? There's only one agency, which is the FDA in the case for health, and the SEC in the case of securities, but not commodities. And this can actually get complex when new technology is developing, in which case Congress then develops new agencies. But the challenge is that it's a monopoly, right? And that is not voluntary through, okay, this agency just has better rules or better oversight than another one, but it's forced on you, right? If you're a business, you can choose that, at least if you're living in that country. And regulators can also change rules on you. You still have the choice to go to other jurisdictions, which very frequently happens. And the question is also, why is it better in the United States or in developed nations than in less developed nations? So it's still that these agencies are better than nothing. So it's better than having no oversight. And also there are mechanisms to have more independent review and to have more merit-based review. Yeah, you still need expertise. You still need to know what you're doing. You can't just use it for political or personal gain, right? Which is often happening in lesser developed countries, where if they have regulatory agencies, they're very strongly captured by political interest, often for personal gain, and they're very corrupt. So there is less of that in developed countries, but it's still, in a way, corruption. It's just legalized corruption in a way, right? And legalized corruption is in some ways better and seems more advanced and is better for business because you have some predictability and certainty. But in other ways, it's also worse. And that is because it gives it an air of legitimacy. It makes us not question that it's happening in the first place. Like, why does one agency have this right to tell an entire industry what to do? And it also doesn't make us question the incentives, right? Because the problem with these agencies is less that they're staffed with bad people. They're often staffed by good people and by experts, is the incentives. Right? So as a monopoly, you don't have an incentive to improve, right? This is why monopoly industries get worse over time. The quality of their service is declining and their costs are increasing. And basically, that is what's happening with monopoly agencies in places like the United States. And that is sort of the very radical shift here. Right? So the system in Próspera allows you and anyone else to set up a regulatory authority that works through opt-in, and there's insurance markets that decide what gets adopted. And the incentive for an insurer is not to let you do whatever you want as a business, because then they have to pay, but they also don't want to overregulate you, right? Because otherwise you go to the next guy who has more streamlined or more business-friendly regulations, right? So the incentive really is to figure out what are the best regulations, what is the right mix of transparency and oversight, and allowing the businesses and its customers to take risk under informed consent.
Providing good governance is so important, is that it basically determines whether a country is rich or poor. whether the people will be hungry or whether they will have abundance. And so, there are many charts you can see online. Basically the y-axis, is GDP per capita of the country, and the x-axis is, the quality of governance. And it's a clear and pure relationship where the better the governance services, the wealthier the country. And this is a trend that is much stronger than other trends people are talking about. People are saying, the things that determine a country is like its history or the racial profile or the geographical profile or the time zone profile. People come up with all sorts of explanations for why some countries are rich and some countries are poor. But actually the main variable that shows a clear relationship is what is the quality of governance in that country, right? Which basically is, what is the rule of law? Is it fairly distributed? Is it minimalistic law that's easy to work with and easy to comply with so you can start businesses and hire people, without problems? It's all of these basic things that makes a huge difference for the prosperity of a country.
What is governance as a service? The starting point that's very important to understand is to think of government as providing a service called governance, right? So what do governments do? They issue passports, they make rules, they administer the rules, they provide courts, they provide security, things like that. These are all services, and services can also be provided in competition, not by monopoly. So states and governments often have a monopoly over territory, and within that territory you can't compete. You can still have competition between governments, right? So you can go to the Bahamas, or you can go to Estonia, or to Switzerland, or to Singapore, Dubai. So you as an individual are increasingly having choices, right? So far that's more attainable if you're wealthier, but through more competition and governance as a service, it would also be attainable for people that are just starting out or building their wealth, or maybe even at the bottom or unemployed or don't really have a lot of options. So these can be places and providers of governance that treat you as a customer, that give you a choice. Where can I get a better deal? Where can I get a better job? Where can I get better taxes and all of that? So governance as a service or governance competition is already happening. It's happened for thousands and tens of thousands of years. It's just that your government is kind of trying to discreetly sort of hide that fact, right? Because they don't want you to leave, right? So the typical government adds a lot of services and provides a bundle. And when you vote for a political party, they give you like a huge bundle, right? And that bundle is intended kind of to lock you in by getting more responsibilities. And that also influences how governments regulate and rule. They should be the saviors of things. Like, there's a problem, so I'm here to solve it, right? Which gives them more power, which locks you in more into the bundle. So governance as a service is intended to kind of disentangle the state and its services. It's intended to unbundle it, right? So in business, you have the phenomenon of bundling and unbundling. Sometimes it makes more sense to bundle a thing, right? So we prefer to only go to Netflix for all these different movies, right? So you bundle the ones that came from different producers and everything. And sometimes it makes sense to unbundle. So for example, when you're a content creator, we're going away from places like the New York Times and the Washington Post and all these mainstream news outlets to more independent content creators because it gives you a higher diversity. And governance is a perfect industry to unbundle, right? Because we know we can provide security services privately. That happened before Próspera, right? So that's not an anarcho-capitalist idea or something like that. Like security on the island, there's all these resorts that all have private security guards. University campuses in the United States have private security. 50% of all security in the United States is done privately. So that's not a new idea. And like even law is not a new idea to provide privately. There's all sorts of arbitration agencies that are internationally accepted. There's all sorts of tribunals and disputes resolution mechanisms between companies. And even the original idea of the United States, having the actual US states as laboratories of governance that compete with each other, that sort of each make their different rules and regulations to attract businesses and people, that is not a new idea, right? It's just something that we don't do enough of.
We're a company that is providing governance as a service in collaboration with host countries and host governments, right? And that model is only really possible to do here. But if it works here, if we make it work here, and we make it successful here, then we can scale it, globally. And so that was what was so unique with this opportunity, I feel, is that if we make this one work, we can see this trend take off all around the world. But if this one fails, then, it's much harder to scale the concept as a whole.
The key idea with the current model of kind of startup cities or governance service providers is in partnership with existing nations or governments, right? So this is important because all the world is basically settled and is under the jurisdiction of existing governments, right? So of course there's seasteading, and that requires just a lot more technology improvement because currently it's still very expensive. But in the absence of that, or of our ability to go to other planets, we need to create a positive sum relationships with existing governments. Fortunately, that is not even the hardest part. Right, so this has happened for a very long time. Almost all governments are kind of a bit two-faced. They are treating people that live there, have lived there for a very long time, as taking them for granted and increase taxes on them and all of that. But most governments and many governments are actually very open and actively try to bring investments from abroad and offering deals to people that come and bring their talents and bring money. Right, so Dubai and Singapore are very good examples. Portugal is a very good example, offering a very good tax deal and digital nomad visas. Or Estonia and the e-governance platform. So governments are already looking to what can we do or offer to bring more people, to bring talent, to bring money. And there's one model that is a good niche for that and is also very widely established, is that of special economic zones.
Watch the full interview at CiVL.com. CiVL is a hub for ideas that upgrade human systems and a community of like-minded builders. Join us.